Hello and welcome to day 2 of Be Local PDX's 5th annual conference. This year focused on the idea of transformation. I'm Galit Riley. My pronouns are she and her.
And I'm Sarah Rothenfletch. My pronouns are also she, her.
Welcome everybody, let's wake up. I'm Corey Jacobs and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you once again to DJ C Money for kicking off our day with so much energy. We're looking forward to having you pop in and out throughout our morning.
Based on the overwhelming feedback from yesterday for C Money, you'll get to see a little bit more and actually meet Chantel later. We know you want to stick around later for a dance party at the end of the day as well.
Today's programming begins in just a couple of minutes and runs straight through to 1 p.m. Like yesterday, there'll be some keynote conversations and lots of opportunities to connect in breakout sessions. Follow along with all the sessions on Sched. That's likely how you got here. The main sessions are in this room. There are different unique links to each breakout, so just go back to Sched and follow the link to the place you want to go. And if you're ever lost, just come on back here and we'll help you out.
We would like to recognize the Indigenous communities that have stewarded the land that we now know as the Portland metro area. We recognize that this is the territory of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Chinook, Clackamas, Tualatin, Kayapuyah, Molalla, Wasco, Cowlitz, and the many other Indigenous peoples. These tribes are now represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. You can find out more at grandronde.org. Now, if you're joining us from beyond the Portland metro area, we encourage you to use existing resources such as nativeland.ca to find out which Indigenous communities are native to your region. Despite this being a virtual event, we must acknowledge that we are experiencing this gathering on physical land that was stolen from Indigenous peoples. Now, during this conference, you'll have a very unique opportunity to develop a deeper understanding of the role of conscientious businesses like B Corps in engaging Indigenous communities. We have 2 breakout sessions today that are exploring those relationships, and they're really going to be amazing. The panels are fantastic. So sign up for them on Sched.
As we proceed through the day, please remember our community guidelines. Lead with empathy and curiosity. Speak from experience. Personal well-being is first priority. One person, one mic. Move up, move up. If you tend to speak a lot, be quiet. And if you're quiet, speak up.
We don't have to be articulate all of the time. Acknowledge the difference between intent and impact. Practice radical inclusion, maintain confidentiality, and get more comfortable with discomfort.
Now, if any of you were following yesterday, you would have seen that fantastic art that was being created. So we're going to see some more of it right now. Kyra Watkins, the Portland Street Alliance artist, is continuing her painting right here in Southeast Portland. I understand that some of you went and checked it out yesterday afternoon. So she began this yesterday morning, and the progress has been enormous. We have Karen there watching and seeing what's happening. Karen, how's it going?
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm out here again at the Nova building here with Kyra Watkins, and she's just getting going this morning. It's a little chilly out here. We're gonna say hi to Kyra and see how the mural is doing. All right.
Hello.
Hey Kyra.
Hi, it's day 2. It's detail day. I love detail day. It's when the work comes to life. I hope you guys enjoy the process, and I look forward to you guys checking in and see the progress we make.
Awesome. Love that. Detail day. So we will be checking in with Kyra throughout the day and leaving it on to watch her progress through the breakout sessions as well. So hope you enjoy that, and we'll see it at the end of the day. Come check it out in person too, Central East Side of Portland at the Nova building. We'll put the address in the chat.
Awesome, thank you guys so much. It's great to see activity going already, even though it's a little chilly out there. I want to say a quick congratulations to the winners from yesterday's raffle. Julie Hudak won the gift box, Eric Wilson won the estate planning from Align Law, and Holly Klein won the standing desk from Foley. We've reached out to all of them and can't wait to get them their prizes. Right now, I'd like to introduce Jocelyn Britson, the Director of Environment and Community Impact at Tillamook. Tillamook is our second presenting sponsor of the conference. Jocelyn, we're truly grateful for Tillamook's support of the conference and welcome you to introduce the first session of the day.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to introduce this important topic and incredible panel. My name is Jocelyn Britson. I'm the Director of Environment and Community Impact at the Tillamook County Creamery Association. Tillamook is a farmer-owned cooperative, dairy cooperative, formed in 1909, and we're still owned by about 75 farming families in Tillamook, Oregon, where we have a processing plant. We have another processing plant in Boardman, as well as an office in Northwest Portland in Slabtown, right across the street from New Seasons. You probably know us for our cheeses, but we also have ice creams, yogurts, spreads, and other products. We were thrilled to become a B Corp last fall, and we're excited to join you here for our first BOLD Pacific Northwest Conference. So as everyone knows, the topic of this conference is transformation of using business as a force for good. And the panel today is focused on anti-racism. My idea and my thoughts behind anti-racism, it's how can we move beyond just learning and leap into action? And before we dive into the panel, I wanted to share a few examples of how Tillamook incorporates diversity, equity, and inclusion in our cooperative model, how we show up for employees as well as our communities. Our DEI work is integrated into our company's values and our culture. It's not just a standalone or a one-time initiative that is relegated to a function or person. Inclusion is a crucial enabler to fuel our growth, and we actually feel it's related to our business success. To achieve our growth and ambition and win in the marketplace, we must think creatively, work collaboratively, and leverage different perspectives to let the best ideas rise to the top. In addition, we're in a place where all employees have the opportunity to contribute, feel valued, and have a sense of belonging. We feel that they want to bring their authentic self to work. And by creating that an enriching and fulfilling work environment and experience for our employees, we feel this also improves employee relations and retention. So we have invested in our employees. We've actually partnered with Alexis Braley-James, who is on today's panel, to help us create our curriculum, which we call Building an Inclusive Culture. This is a 4-hour session that many of our staff go through that describes why inclusion matters, how we can develop a common language and vocabulary, and sharing best practices on how to interrupt bias at work, as well as setting personal and professional goals. In addition to all of this work, we have 1.5-hour monthly meetings called Inclusion Circles, where staff can drop into a conversation to sustain this learning. In addition, we've established I&D Commit and Act framework and plan with 4 specific goals that we use to keep us accountable and ensure that we're taking action to make tangible progress moving forward. And of course, how do we show up in our community? We try to make maximum social impact for every dollar donated. For those of you familiar with Tillamook, we have a stewardship report, and each year we commit at least 4% of our net income to our community partners. We want to be transparent to consumers who might not understand what a $5,000 donation might mean or $1 million donation. Some companies hide what percentage of their giving it is, and we feel it's a good practice to be transparent. We also go big by going small. So far this year, we've already donated to 180 different organizations with a median donation of $3,500. Now, I've been at Tillamook for the last 18 months, but I have tried to push our cooperative forward in how we show up for communities of color. We have 3 areas of focus for funding: agricultural advocacy, food security, and healthful children. We've examined and re-examined these giving areas, and we've actually come to realize that they are aligned with who we are as a food processor and addressing critical social causes. However, to activate our stewardship, we have to intentionally do research and more networking with new organizations to ensure that we're impacting diverse populations throughout the area. Some examples, we support and have increased support for BIPOC farmers. Equitable Giving Circle has been mentioned a few times. Just this past Monday, our committee voted to support them. We've also given to Oregon Food Bank generously in the past, but this year we're increasing our support and supporting their new Growers Pilot Program, which is connecting BIPOC farmers and LGBTQ farmers with local people in need. In addition, last year, we contributed $1.6 million to the American Farmland Trust. In that program, we helped preserve over 8,000 acres of farmland across the US. That's going to make farming more available and more affordable for generations to come. In addition, we kickstarted their Brighter Futures microgrants program, where they distribute $135,000 grants to farmers around the country. We're also continuing that program, providing underwriting support for the next 2 years. And of those grants that went out last year, 96% went to underserved or underrepresented farmers, including female, non-binary, LGBTQ, and Bypoc farmers. We like to pitch in many ways, and this is too short of a presentation to give an idea there. But last year, we also contributed to many smaller organizations within the Tillamook, Portland, and Boardman areas. We helped out with the Heart and Hustle Expressions in Black video series. We're expanding our idea of agricultural advocacy to include school garden programs and community gardening, including getting 200 kids out to the Sauvie Island Center. We work with Urban Gleaners, Grow Portland, the Community Cycling Center, Blessings in a Backpack, just to name a few. So we have many resources and books for self-reflection, learning our history, and acknowledging our privilege, but that's only the first step. We cannot stop there. I'm not an expert in DEI, but I feel that we must use our position, our power, and our businesses to make lasting change for the present and the future. And that truly is what transformation is. So I'm very excited to introduce this panel. I'm going to listen, take notes, and learn with these experts in action, advocacy, and allyship. So without further ado, here's Marielle, Alexis, and Minna. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Mina Yu, and I'm the founder and CEO of Love Bottle. And I'm also really excited to be part of the Be Local PDX board. I joined this year and have loved being part of this team and community. I'm also on the leadership circle of We the Change, which is a group of B Corp women founders and CEOs. And you can learn more about us at wethechange.net. And it's been my privilege to work with Alexis as a board member, as we've worked with a team on the board to put together a Jedi, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion workshop series that's going to be launching in December and open to our B Corp community. So you like Tillamook will get to work with the amazing Alexis in that capacity. And so it's more information on how to sign up should be going out soon. And in We the Change, I've had the privilege of watching Mari speak about what she's doing with B Lab, with the B Corp community, and the amazing work that she's doing. And so I'm really excited to be helping facilitate this conversation, to learn more about them, who they are as people, and the amazing work that they're doing for our community. So first, Mari, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background? Where are you from, and what was your experience growing up?
Hi, everyone, and thank you for this conversation. I'm really excited. I am from Washington, D.C., formerly known as Chocolate City. I grew up with my mom and dad. They were both attorneys. My dad owned a practice in Northwest where he advocated for small proprietors and taxi cab drivers. And my mom worked for the Taxi Cab Commission, which is where they met. Unfortunately, when I was about 3, my dad passed away. And my mom had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So she was a young woman, she had this little girl, and she didn't have a lot of support without her husband being able to raise me. So we moved in with my grandma and my grandpa in the city. And that became my life growing up. It was my mom and my grandma and my grandpa. My grandma was a social worker, and she worked with youth in the city. And my grandpa worked for the Pentagon. What he did there, we'll never know. He also owned a small business and was a limo and taxi cab driver himself. So I grew up in the city. It was Chocolate City. I grew up aware of my Blackness, but not really feeling it because I was always around teachers that looked like me and students that looked like me. So that wasn't something I experienced until college, when I really felt my Blackness and felt the difference in being from a city where you're the majority and then being in a place where you're not. I also was very involved as a child. So I was in Mentors Inc. and Future Business Leaders of America. And my first job was actually my senior year of high school. I joined a program called Urban Alliance that gave opportunities for students in the city, especially students of color, to be able to intern. And I worked for the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee of Washington. And looking back at it, for that to be my first job was pretty pivotal in shifting my career in a certain direction. And with the way my grandma and my grandpa and my mom and my dad led their lives, really being in service of other people.
Thank you for sharing. I find it so, you get to know somebody so much more when you hear a little bit about their actual upbringing and like their family and where they came from. And what about you, Alexis? Can you share a little bit with us as well about where you grew up and what your experience was?
Yeah, and I love hearing about your story, Mari. We have so many similarities. So I just feel like I found a kinship to you. So I born and raised in the Portland metro area. I've lived kind of everywhere from Gresham to Beaverton, but my parents were really young. They were 17 and 18 when they had me. And so I also was raised with my grandparents and spent a lot of time with them. Growing up in the Portland metro area and being biracial, I was one of the few Black people in my neighborhood, and I was hyper aware of being different. And I oftentimes struggled to find my people. I either felt out of place with Black folks and out of place with white folks. And there weren't too many Black people growing up in Aloha, which is where I spent most of my time, my formative years. The little tiny town in between Beaverton and Hillsborough, if you're familiar with the West Side. And my people ended up being the Latinx community. They kind of adopted me into their community, and I was able to have friends and hung out on weekends, listening to mariachi music and cleaning the house, eating chilaquiles. And I learned how to speak Spanish. At school, I always felt sort of hyper visible, and I was pushed into lower end classes when I had applied to AP. Until high school, I had a teacher who really saw my potential and encouraged me to join academic, like this higher level history class, and I fell in love with history. And from there, my mind had this solar focus, the singular focus that I wanted to be a history teacher. And so I graduated from high school, I went to college, and that's where I really found my Blackness, and the connection to it was through studying Black history and Black studies at Portland State University. It just grew my confidence, knowing that the reason that I was feeling like such an outsider was not me, but that it was a system, and it was systemic racism. And that sort of opened my eyes. And I then, from that moment of being 19, wanted to tell the world about this thing called systemic racism. And at that time, there wasn't really a place, there weren't jobs, there wasn't a career funnel into systemic racism work. So I ended up becoming a teacher. And I taught history and government in a lot of different ways at alternative schools and public schools. And then eventually I was a middle school assistant principal, and I was responsible for discipline. And if you know much about the school system, there is disproportionate discipline in the sense that we were expelling and suspending 11 and 12-year-olds at a much higher rate than everyone else. And that was really traumatic for me. And so I came in and decided to, I didn't decide, they asked me to change that data. It needed to change. We needed to stop sending them home. We needed to invite them into the classroom. And through that process of really creating opportunities for the majority white teachers to learn how to talk to communities of color from a place of connection and empathy versus this penalistic fear. And it really shifted the data. We then, our school community changed and it started to be really loving, caring, and focused on learning, which is what a school building should be doing. And so those 3 years of that process just kind of burnt me out, both as a Black woman and as an educator. And I wanted to move beyond that. I wanted my impact to be outside of the school system. And so I began consulting and working with nonprofits. And I've really enjoyed that process. It's been healing to see that those kids that I worked with as 11 and 12-year-olds will now be able to enter the workplace and feel seen and feel heard. And so that has now been my commitment to giving back and working with communities, and in particular B Corps who are mission driven and committed to ending this oppression, to create a space where any one of my children can walk in, get a job, and feel like, yes, this is the place for me. I feel included.
I love how your role, your early start in education transitioned totally to the work that you're doing as you continue to educate us as businesses and communities in a same but different kind of capacity. So that's really wonderful. And Mari, what about you? Where did your career start and how did that help lead into the work you're doing now?
That's so interesting because Alexis, I do feel like we're so similar, but it was opposite. So growing up as a child, I always felt included racially, because everyone looked similar and identified in the same way. Majority of my schools growing up were predominantly Black or Latinx, and there wasn't really other racial demographics that were the majority. So I didn't feel like marginalized, and I didn't really experience that until I went to college. And when I got to college, I remember myself and my roommate were the only 2 Black folks on our floor, and we got ostracized often. So I couldn't understand, like, why does everyone go to parties but not invite us? Like, we're nice. Or I couldn't understand like why everyone else was friends, but we weren't included, or why we didn't get the invites. And we would even like leave our dorm room open so like people could come in. We were like, talk to us. We're friendly, we're nice. And I was having a really hard time transitioning. I found it very difficult to understand like why I didn't fit. And then I started recognizing that culturally, the way I spoke, the music I listened to, the way I dressed was different. And people started pointing out my accent from DC and saying like, you sound different. And I began to recognize like, oh, like I don't necessarily fit. But it was also my AFAM classes, my African American Studies classes, Africology, and the Black Student Union that gave me home place when I was in school. So I joined the Black Student Union and became first the secretary, then the vice president and student advisor. And in one of our Black Student Union meetings, we had people from the AFAM department come in and say like, hey, this is the major and this is what we learned. And I decided to try out a course, which was the Black Woman. And when I entered into the classroom, I instantly felt like I was home. And it was such a different experience learning about race and systemic racism and about Blackness when I had been Black my whole life, but it was never something that was studied or even talked about. It was what you were. But it was so different to be able to actually talk about it and then begin to recognize, oh, I'm being ostracized because I'm different and there are racial and cultural differences on my floor. Oh, that's why I don't feel like I fit here. Makes sense. And even certain comments about when I wore my hair in an afro and in braids, it made sense. And I was like, oh, I get it now. And that really led me on a path to racial equity work. I decided to pick up AFAM as a major, but like Alexis said, like racial equity wasn't a job. It wasn't something you could figure out like, oh, I could go directly to this company and do this back then. So I also picked up public relations as another major, and began my course in public relations, but still paying close attention to racial equity, and discovering once I got into the workforce that it closely related to what was then known as DEI or EDI, which gave me a lot of energy. And I too left college and went into the school system.
Thank you, Mari. It's really great to see how these journeys, how they start in different areas in different ways, like how you and Alexis had similar but flip-flopped experiences, but they both brought you in a similar place in your journey. And so I'd love to learn more about what you guys are doing to help drive this work within the B Corp community. Mari, do you want to start?
So one of my key things I think about when I do my work is that people want to feel seen, valued, and cared for. So when I approach this work, I do it in a place of caring for the people that this work would impact the most. And when people ask me like, how am I able to implement these certain things, or how do I do things well? It's because I truly love the community that I'm serving. And I feel like I'm more of a servant leader than I am like, I don't know, a strategist. Like I'm serving and listening to the community's needs. So for B Lab, we have the Black, Indigenous, and People of Color community. That is a segment right now where I host events that are BIPOC only. We also have partnerships that go directly to this community, including Take Your Seat with CEO Jerusha Stewart, which is a program that recognizes that boards aren't diverse and then places diversity on those boards with mentorship, and partners with B Corps like Beauty Counter to be able to utilize those services for our companies and B Corps. I also work with companies like Habitus that do negotiation training for people of color, recognizing that sometimes we are grateful for our jobs and we don't want to ask for more, or sometimes we're conditioned not to ask for more, and are able to utilize those skills to be able to move forward in the workforce. I also work directly with CEOs and executives of our B Corps, but I'm very intentional about engaging workers in our organizations because workers are the most vulnerable when decisions are made, and a lot of the resources that we have within this community could help develop the next leaders that join this community as well. There was one beekeeper that worked for CDFI and moved on to a different company and is now taking that company through certification, but they work on combating gentrification and allowing folks interest rates that are affordable to be able to purchase back property in neighborhoods where it's happening, especially in Atlanta. So my approach to the work is really to center our community. And then the second part is to educate our community. So we have a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion education series. These are hosted by members of the BIPOC community at B Lab for the broader community. So folks like Anu Gupta from Be More with Anu is a scientist, has interviewed with Oprah, is incredible, and agreed to share that knowledge with folks that wanted to learn more about the racial caste system. Or Julie Savaria, who runs a consulting firm, Jedi Kids, is hosting an event in November to teach us how we can better steward our next generation to also lean into Jedi, because as we do this work, there are little ones watching us as well and learning from us.
Thank you, Mari. Yeah, I participated in that one about the caste system. It was so wonderful. And so all the offerings that you guys are providing for us are so helpful and powerful. And what about you, Alexis? I know you've worked with so many people already in the Portland and Oregon community. How are you? I know that there probably is a waiting list for you at this point to work with you and their organization, but share with us the work you're doing in the B Corp community.
Yeah, so through Construct the Present, my business, we really focus on culture change and how to heal communities, because our theory of change is that racism and oppression is traumatizing. And so by taking a trauma-informed care to consciousness raising, we're able to make shifts long-term. And so we do a bit of training, which is that consciousness raising, everything from how to provide equitable supervision to how to connect across difference, and building an inclusive culture within your organization, where we work primarily with people leaders and C-suite coaching of how do you lead from this place of vulnerability and empathy. And then we do a bit of strategy, which is making the work sustainable, because it's just not sustainable to hire a consultant forever till the end of time. This work really needs to come internal and be owned by every level and every individual in a company or organization. And from there, we're really focused on implementing what we sometimes call DEI teams, which is a small task force that leads the work, or a think tank, and then establishing affinity groups, or what some people call employee resource groups, and thinking about employee resource groups both as an opportunity for affinity, for people to come together who feel like the only, the other, or the few, but then also using those groups and the wisdom that exists there to reinforce the policy and processes that are being created. And then the last thing that we do really is audits. And I like to think of that as a mirror. It's a mirror for your company to really see where are you doing it well? Because oftentimes these policies changes are implemented and no one follows up to see if it's actually making the change that you're hoping it to do. And then part of the J in Jedi, we try to really focus on what does justice look like for for-profit companies. It's a different conversation. And I think it's much of what Mari was talking about in thinking about that diversity on boards, re-engaging in the community, wealth redistribution. And so we help strategize and think through what does that look like and how is that impacted? But all of that is done same as centering the people who are most vulnerable. Sometimes when we're thinking about a process or a change that needs to happen, I like to think like, how would this impact a Black trans woman, and someone who is incredibly vulnerable, and the system has been created without them in mind. And so really thinking about that and trying to bring those people into the conversation, because I don't have those identities. I identify as cisgendered heterosexual, but my Blackness is constantly on my mind. And so really being able to harness that and stay connected to my community.
Thank you for sharing. I wanted to let the audience know that there is a Q&A. We should have a few minutes for some questions that you can ask directly to Alexis and Mari at the end. So you can pop those questions into the Q&A box and we'll try to get to those later. And so as you guys, how do you continue your own learning in this field? What keeps you engaged and from getting burnt out and keeps you kind of passionate about the work? Let's talk with Mari first.
I'll be honest, in this work, sometimes I feel discouraged. I've had moments where I felt really hopeless, because once you really understand systemic racism and how deep it is, and how it's not just US, it's in Canada, it's in Australia, it's in Europe, it's everywhere. It can feel really big to try to tackle, and sometimes feel like maybe the work you're doing isn't going to make a huge impact on like centuries of systemic racism. But what's encouraging for me is the energy that there's so many other people working on this and I'm not alone. And even when I don't get to directly work with other people in similar roles, I know that they exist. And a lot of them are also in the B Corp community. And being honest, I don't know if I would be able to sustain this work in other places. Like when I was a teacher, it was too much for me because I saw my students come into class every day. And because I was consciously aware of systemic racism, I understood that them being from a low income area, an area that's kind of shut off from the rest of DC, one that has food deserts and impacts the ability for certain parents to get jobs. Like I knew that all of that was showing up when they came into class, but I couldn't sustain it because I didn't see the school system trying to combat the systemic nature and instead just focusing on like behavioral issues, as Alexis spoke about, or punishing students. But I feel very encouraged in the B Corp community because I know that everyone a part of B Lab is about what they say they're about. Like some people say it, but they don't mean it. But I know my colleagues say it and mean it. And then in terms of educating myself, I'm always in a class, I'm always in a course. I'm always looking for something on LinkedIn Learning or Coursera. Right now, I'm working on a creative writing specialty from Wesleyan University. It's not related to Jedi work, but I'm just naturally curious. And I just recently received a certification in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So it's just a natural thing about me where I want to join this organization and learn from them and do their trainings and take this course. And I don't see it as like my education will ever stop. There's always something I'm going to need to learn or be able to learn. And it's just about seeking that knowledge instead of being complacent and waiting for it to come to me.
Thank you, Mari. I'm sure this must feel like such an overwhelming challenge. It's such a huge, massive issue that, like you said, has been centuries, but we so appreciate your leadership and guidance and teaching, and you as well, Alexis. So Alexis, the questions are rolling in, and so you can touch upon the question I just asked Mari, but also the question about what could you share for the white folks in the room and for everyone's benefit? How do you distinguish between extractive transitions that take from marginalized BIPOC folks versus authentic community building engagement that drives Jedi work? That's kind of an intense question.
That's okay, I can read it. Well, I think for me, in that answer is like what the biggest struggle is constantly checking my own privilege, both class privilege and my proximity to whiteness, being both biracial and having family members, is wanting to create authentic relationships with people of color and communities of color. My community, it looks like building that relationship before I need anything. You know, I don't go out and find people of color with the idea in mind that I will one day need their expertise. I'm going and building authentic relationships because I know there's value in having a diverse circle, just because that's what's going to keep me more well-rounded. That's what's going to keep me in touch with my own Blackness and my own femininity. And so I think oftentimes what I see is companies or organizations only reaching out to communities of color when there's a benefit for them. And so I think that work has to start long before there's anything that's needed. And what does that reciprocity look like? Because we also don't build friends, you know, well, maybe you do, but those transactional relationships of like, I'm going to make friends with you because I think one day I'll need you. No, we're building affinity, people who have something in common with us and are interested in the things that we're interested in. And I think that has to be the same when we're thinking about communities and companies engaging with each other. But it sounds like, Mari, you do this work on a day-to-day basis. So I'd love to hear your expertise.
I completely agree with you, Alexis, about extractive relationships. And one of the first things I did when I started this role was began to have coffee chats with people, a part of the B Corp community that I already knew identified as BIPOC based on our data. And I did this not to ask, like, what's your business model and what do you do? I literally wanted to talk to people for an hour about themselves because I cared, and I wanted to be able to let them know that I did care. And as I got to know people on a human level, folks just felt more trusting of me and more willing to come to me and share advice. And now it's gotten to the point where if I do need to ask for something on behalf of B-Lab, people would be willing to do so. But one thing that's always in my mind is my role is to serve this community. My role isn't to serve B-Lab. I work for B-Lab, but I'm serving this community, a part of the ecosystem. So in the decisions I make and with the power I have, if a decision would benefit B-Lab, but not benefit the community, I'm not doing it. And if a decision would benefit the community, but not necessarily benefit BLab, I'm doing it, because the center of my work are the people that are the most impacted. And when you really need to shift power, you have to make decisions that don't just benefit the bottom line or benefit the business value or business proposition, but decisions that benefit people. So I put those people first, and it's the way I model my work. And I think that one of the benefits is that it has benefited BLab innately. Centering folks and doing what's right for them innately benefits BLab.
I think that's so true. And I think it can sometimes be difficult to show that it will innately benefit because it doesn't immediately. We're so used to these instant results and the instant benefit. And that is what just continues to support white supremacist thinking. And the only people that benefits is the people who already are in existence and doing well, have all the wealth and power. And so you're inspiring me right now. Go back.
So there's additional questions coming in. Someone wants advice on how to recruit diverse professionals when Portland's known as a very white city. And so when the pool that they look on tends to be predominantly one ethnicity or another, but they want more diversity. This person asking the question, they're a dentistry and they typically have a more limited pool. So what kind of advice do you have when somebody is trying to diversify, but has a more limited pool?
Well, first, I think that there's a limited pool can sometimes be a misnomer. It's not actually true. I think that one thing I've learned through working with companies and recruiting for diversity is that's the wrong place to start. It's really the first place to start is how are you creating an ecosystem within your company that will encourage people to stay? Because there's many companies here in the Portland metro area who recruit specifically Black people from all over the country, but we don't stay because there aren't programs here that really connect you. Like, who's your barber? Where do you go to get your hair care? Where can you get food that you're familiar with? Where is your people? But then as far as the pipeline and really diversifying that recruitment strategy, I think we have to reach back into the schools. And maybe I'm biased because I was a high school teacher, but when I was a high school teacher, we weren't talking to kids about being a dentist or a digital marketer or all of these positions that exist today. And there is a need for professionals to go and offer that advice. If you reach out to high schools and say, I just want to come talk to your class about my role, and if I can give them any advice, we have to connect, because really school is our first job. And that's where we're training and educating children on how to engage in the workforce. And there's this huge disconnect between the workplace and the school system. And I think until we come together and really create a fluid experience, there's going to continue to be all the barriers for marginalized groups. And so when the question is specifically around dentistry, and I don't have any expertise in dentistry, but I do know that there is all these barriers to get into college and then to get into professional additional schooling. And so how can you create a process or a system that really, one, raises awareness, and two, reduces the barriers for those communities to get into the workforce?
Absolutely. Well, our time is coming to a close. I'm sad because I could talk to you guys for hours and hours. If there was like a final thought or takeaway, something you could share with the audience as we're closing the session, what's something you'd like to kind of share with the audience as a final thought?
I think what I would share is budgets are moral documents. And if you don't have in your budget training and development specifically to racial equity, diversity, equity, inclusion, then you haven't even begun the process. There has to be this consciousness raising, and that is how you show the value. So that's what I would suggest.
I would add that continuous education, whether or not it's at work or in your personal time, is a major factor that needs to continue to happen. Last summer, everyone was reading and watching different things and buying Black and really engaging. But what I saw was as the year went on, that energy started to dissipate. It's really important, whether or not other folks are doing it or not, for you to continue to self-educate and take that initiative, because once your worldview changes and you see the world from a different lens, then you innately will be able to see, oh, this isn't right, or this may not work well. And you'll begin to center people of color within your viewpoint and your business, and it'll just walk with you wherever you go. But it's important to have that education so you can change your lens and your frame. And it's a continuous thing.
Thank you. And to piggyback on that education thing, again, to share with our B Corp community here and in the Pacific Northwest, this December, we should be launching with our very own Alexis and Construct the Present, the 6-month workshop series that will be, signups will start, I think, in the next few weeks. And then with the We the Change Women's founder and CEO group, we're doing a foundational deep Jedi training, a leadership development. It's 8 months long. There'll be applications going out, opening in November, and that will launch January 2022. So there's 2 different educational series available to the community. If you want to learn more, just email BLocalPDX. And thank you guys both so much. It's such an honor and pleasure to have you both in our B Corp community and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you both.
Yes, thank you. I hope to see you all in different contexts.
Thank you guys very much for joining us today. We really enjoyed those conversations. Marielle Martin is the Community Engagement Manager at B-Lab US and Canada. Alexis Braley James is the founder of Construct the Present, and Mina Yu is the founder and CEO of Love Bottle and a board member at BLocalPDX. We have 5 minutes, so this is probably a good time to talk a little bit about our raffles again. Thank you for those of you who signed up yesterday. We're going to put one more link over here. This is a link for 1 year's worth of eggs from Pete and Jerry. So follow the link if you want to register for that. Yes, 1 entire year's worth. You get a dozen eggs every week for a year. And then we also have in Sched, if you guys remember from yesterday, if you go and look in Sched, there's a giveaway. You can sign up for those too, and we will update you guys about winners later today. We are now going to have an opportunity to pause for movement.
Hello, my name is Alicia Bawani, and I run a Pilates and Gyrotonic studio in Portland, Oregon, and I'm going to take you through a series of movements that you can do on a chair. This is called Gyrokinesis. It was created by Julia Horvath. And so I'm going to show you sideways. You do want to sit a little bit forward on your chair or stool, especially if there's a backrest to your stool. So if you're a little more in front, it'll allow you to move more freely. Your feet are going to be, the dog is in the way. Your feet are going to be a little bit in front of you, and you'll want your hip higher than your knee. You're going to have your hands in your lap. You're going to take an inhale up and let your pelvis fall forward so you feel the weight of your pubic bone and the lift of your chest. Then you're going to rock back, find the back of the sit bone and rock back. So the pelvis moves and your throat is over your pubic bone. Let's do that again. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale, rock the pelvis back, curl. So it's very gentle. It's not a big motion. Stay with that. Or you could clasp your hands behind your head. Gives you a little more lift. Lift your chest, lean forward, press your head back to your hands, then lengthen up and find that curl. Throat back, or I should say sit bones back, throat over pubic bone. Again. And curl. So the more you do that, you can find a little more motion in there, a little more expansion. Arms come down and we're going to do some spirals. And you're going to reach around yourself, look, see with your eyes, come back to center. Let your pubic bone turn into your leg. Good. Let your chest lead the way. You might feel more weight on one side versus the other. Hopefully you feel pretty even. I definitely feel a little more bony pressure on one side versus the other. And it's the opposite side. This side, the way I'm turning away from is I feel a little more of that bony pressure. And come back to center. We're now going to do a little side bend. I'm moving back to create space for my dog. You're going to bring your heels in and reach your knees out. Feel a little stretch on that inner thigh. Tip your head and come back to center. So as you tip your head, you're shifting your weight. You're shifting your ribs. You're letting kind of, if you imagine water in your ear, let it pour out one side and then let it pour out the other side. You're getting that little side bend. Reach your arms and lift the opposite elbow and lift. And lift. And lift. So you're reaching down towards the ground, but lift the other elbow up. That expands those ribs. Good. Nice. Back to center. We're going to bring our feet a little more narrow, so you can do a little circle with your pelvis, just to kind of get things rounding and arching and curling around the circle. I'm feeling weight on one hip bone and the back to the other hip bone to the front, then reverse that. Very nice. You're getting a little kind of dance in, a little motion. Come back to center. Now the wave, you're going to lift your chest up. You're going to find a little bit of that arch. Lean forward on your chair and then rock your pelvis back, bringing your spine up. Again, we're just moving forward like water reaching for the beach, and then that ocean pulls you back. That's your pelvis. It's pulling you. Your head stays there. Now round your back, get your pelvis to move. One more. And reverse. You're going to dive down, push to the top of the head, lift the sternum up, curl, dive. Lift the sternum up. One more time. You're getting into your curl. Drop the head, push down, look out, lead with the head, and come up. So that's the wave. Now, I'm going to let us repeat that and go a little faster, just so you can get a little more motion and get more into it. Your hands could be behind your head or on your lap. We're going to go up into that arch. Lift the chest, lean forward on the pubic bone, rock back into the curl. I can show you sideways so you can see what the body's doing. Arching, pushing upwards in the back and curl, throat over pubic bone. Again, arch and curl. Just rocking on the stool. My weight goes forward and up and back and up. Trying to get that movement in the pelvis. One more. Rock the pelvis back. Good. And then back to the front. I just want to show you the spirals again. We're going to do a few more. 1. Turning the body. 2. Lifting the chest. 3. 4. 5. One more. 6. We're going to add the hands so you can cross your body. And almost like you're trying to wind yourself up and then let it go. Make sure you breathe. Letting that pubic bone move. Letting your chest move. One more time. And back to center. Opening the legs a little wide. Going into the side shifts. You're going to reach for the floor. Reach up with the elbow. 1 and 2 and 3. Good. 4. Lift it up higher. 5. Couple more. 6. 2 more. 7 and 8. Bring one hand into your lap. Push up. Reach. Feel the space between your hip and your hand getting longer. Reaching, push the ceiling away. Bring that hand up. We're just gonna do 3 pulls to one side, up and over. 1. Fanning out those ribs. 2. And reaching over. 3. Grab the other hand and big stretch side. 1. Get that arm right along your ear there. 2. And 3. Come back into the center, bringing your legs more together and doing a quick circle around, and then we'll finish up with waves. So doing a little bit of that circular motion, your weight transferring around the stool, and then the other way. Just did 3. Trying to move quick here. 2, so get some moving in. 3. Come back to center and find your wave. So that wave is the chest moving forward, the top of the head reaching out, rock back through the pelvis. Find the curl, stay there. Now dive down and come up. So we can do that. Go into the arch and directly to the curl, back to the curl and into the arch. Stay in the curl. Exhale, dive. Inhale, come up. You can also take that motion out over one thigh. And then dive down into that thigh. Push out to the top of the head. Lead the way to the arch. Other hip, other thigh. And dive. And come up. Good. You're just going to lift those arms, stretch them up there just to get a little bit of space, and then release. And push the arms away. Look up. And release. And on this next one, you're going to push up, hold there. Deep breath in, let it out. Slowly let those arms come down, feel broad and long for the body. And then hopefully you feel a little bit more relaxed, a little more ease, finding some motion. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Well, that was lovely. That was Alicia Buani, the owner of Geometry Pilates. Rose is putting the link to Geometry Pilates in the chat now. If you want to find out a little bit more about Alicia and her studio. Now it's time to head off to Breakout Sessions. One option is to join Anna Knudsen of Madfish Digital. She'll talk about the courage it takes to build transformative teams. She'll explain the elements of high-performing teams and how you can create spaces where people can thrive in in-person and virtual dispersed events.
Also today, there will be 2 very special breakout sessions that explore the roles of contentious businesses, growing B Corps, and engaging Indigenous communities. Here we have an outstanding panel that will begin in about 5 minutes. It's the 2-part panel that Sarah mentioned before, and part 2 will take place in the breakouts at 11:35. So we'll let you guys take a moment and get off to your breakouts. We'll see you when you come back. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about gift boxes. You won't hear too much more about them. There are still a few for sale, but as we mentioned before, we've chosen 2 amazing partners to share our donations with Be Local PDX. We're now Equitable Giving Circle in Verde. You heard a little from Equitable Giving Circle yesterday, and now we'd like to share a short video to let you hear more about Verde.
That was Verde, one of the 3 nonprofits that the profits from our gift boxes will be donated to. Gift boxes will still be available for sale for the next week on Eventbrite. We will go ahead and share the link to that again. Now we're joined by Paul Snyder, the Executive Vice President of Tillamook, and Katie Reardon, the COO of Burgerville, to talk about the steps Tillamook has taken on their journey to become a B Corp.
Good morning, everyone. I think I can, there we go. I'm Katie Reardon. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm excited to have an opportunity in our next discussion to explore the intersection of B Corp and our regional food systems. During the next 15 minutes, we'll be learning about the why and how behind Tillamook's exciting movement towards becoming a B Corp. We have Paul Snyder, Executive Vice President of Stewardship at Tillamook County Creamery Association with us today. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be here and with everybody else in the B Corp community.
Yeah, so exciting to see you. So just a brief bit about Paul for our audience. Since 2019, Paul's been leading the stewardship division at Tillamook, the 112-year-old, that was a new one for me today, 112 years. Now B Corp certified, farmer-owned cooperative, which is the fastest growing cheese and ice cream brand in the United States. So exciting that it's in our backyard as well. Paul has an extensive background in stewardship and sustainability, and I'm excited for him to help unpack for our audience a bit of what makes Tillamook so special as a regional company and brand. So Paul, for our guests here today, what exactly even is a farmer-owned cooperative?
Yeah, it's a bit different. So it's technically a legal structure of ownership, so another form of C Corp or LLC. In this case, our company is owned by around 80 farming families based in Tillamook County, and they are the owners of the business. So they both provide the milk that goes into our plant in Tillamook, but they also oversee the business. And we have a board of directors like many other companies, but instead of having a bunch of independent directors, our board of directors are our farmers. And so we work on behalf of our farmers and they share the profits amongst them.
Wow, what an exciting opportunity, I think, to have a truly collaborative business led by purpose and values. So road to B Corp, why B Corp, why now?
Sure. Well, let's start with just the simple fact that any company should be considering B Corp. The fact is that B Corp did us all the favor of seeing into the future and realizing that it was going to become increasingly relevant to talk about environmental issues, social issues, and governance issues, and to be transparent about what any of us as companies are doing about these issues. And they also saw into the future know that those of us who are in industry are going to want someone to call balls and strikes, someone to actually have the rigor to say they're doing it right, they've got a ways to go. And so first, foremost, and last, as a purpose-driven company, B Corp was something that we really aligned with as a way to let other people know that the things that we're trying to do are meaningful and authentic and impactful. But specific to us, we've been around since the last 112 years. For many of those years, about the first 105 of them, we were going along as a very nice regional brand. I mean, a powerful regional brand. We had over 80% household penetration in the Pacific Northwest. But our board and membership decided they wanted the company to diversify and grow. And that started a number of years ago with a move into the West. So we pushed into California, Arizona, New Mexico, and even into Texas to see if we could distribute at scale and whether our offering, whether our cheese and our ice cream and our other products were relevant to consumers in those markets. Turned out they were, and that they loved them as much as everybody in the Pacific Northwest loved them. And so we about doubled the size of the company with that effort. Our board liked that and said, where next? And so we've been on a journey right now for the last 3 years. We call it our frontier strategy, ironically, because for us, the frontier is the eastern part of the country. So we've been pushing east of the Rockies, growing massively, getting distribution at Target, Costco, Walmart, Stop and Shops, Publix, all of the big retail partners that have outlets on the East Coast. But what was different about the East as opposed to the Pacific Northwest is if you grew up in Oregon or Washington or Idaho, you knew Tillamook. You knew that we were farmer-owned cooperative most of the time. You knew that we were based on the coast and that we were values-driven. Nobody east of the Rockies knows that. They know us as a pretty package and a fantastic product. And so when I thought about how stewardship was going to support not only our business imperatives around serving the environment and animal welfare and society, but also going to serve our ambition to become a national brand, B Corp was the obvious choice for us to go along with, because I always called it an express lane for understanding on behalf of consumers in the East Coast that we're a values-based company. Not everybody in the East Coast knows what B Corp is. More of them know about it once every day. But the fact is, it's going to start showing up on our product label starting this December. And at least it's going to have some sort of a marker to people say there's something about these people just above making awesome cheese and ice cream and making a profit for their owners.
I love the concept of it's an express lane. I mean, you can totally see that as a consumer, right? Even if I don't know what it is now, I'm curious.
Yep.
And Tillamook is really the steward, to your point, of that national growth, which is fantastic. So curious, food systems are near and dear to my heart. I could keep this conversation going, but for the purpose of how much time we have today, can you give a little brief overview of how you see B Corp and Tillamook really stewarding, transforming our food systems?
Our food system is ripe for transformation in so many ways. We are growing as a planet. We are needing to feed more and more people. There is a heightened awareness around food security, more so than maybe at any other time. And so there's going to be a call for more nutrition. At the same time, we know that there are environmental impacts from the production of food, whether it's plant-based, animal-based, whatever. There are environmental impacts, water, energy, and so on. Our job, quite frankly, is to, just as every other industry is being asked to do, get in sync with the climate, and get in sync and dedicate ourselves to producing the food that the world needs and providing the nutrition that people have to have in order to live a life of wellness, but do it in such a way that we don't do it to the detriment of the environment, the climate, and the future. We have signed on to the IDFA, the International Dairy Farmers Association, pledge to be carbon neutral by 2050. Don't know how we're going to get there yet. Know how we're going to get some of the way there. And in fact, we have my team. You heard from Jocelyn earlier when she introduced Alexis. Jocelyn's heading up a bunch of work to sit there and say, how can we move that deadline from 2050 further up? So, B Corp and its call for transparency and its dedication to the environment is essentially going to, again, be a scorecard for people to eventually start looking at really rigorously to sit there and say who's doing their part and who's not. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, that's the role that B Corp plays, along with CDP and a whole bunch of others. But the fact is that the nice shift that's happening is it used to be all you could find out about a company was really its economics. And now even Bloomberg terminals and Dow Jones Sustainability Index data are showing up on Bloomberg terminals and in investment rooms. And so the world's changing and we got to run hell bent for leather to stay ahead of it.
I love that. Well, what I hear in what you're saying, well, two things I'd love to explore in the time that we have remaining. One is to put a goal of 2050 out there, and how are we going to get there assumes, or maybe it doesn't, but I'll assume that then the whole organization is behind the movement of B Corp and better and improved stewardship for the industry as a whole. So would love to hear a little bit about how that's working its way through Tillamook. And then also to your point on this growth of a national presence for a regional brand, to your point, Tillamook's a leader in our region, but it's not necessarily seen that way across the industry. So I'm curious, what is the role of Tillamook as a leader as you continue to grow and dimensionalize the business on a national scale?
First and foremost, we have to lead by example. And so, whether it's Chobani or Land O'Lakes or Tillamook or any of us, those brands that are leaders in the consumer space need to be leaders in the environmental and social justice space. And so, that's the first thing, which is we've got to act. We've got to have impact, not just promise, but deliver. And we're not the biggest brand out there. Land O'Lakes is a way bigger cooperative than we are, but we've got a role to play in terms of thought leadership and showing how we can focus on the communities in which we operate and making an impact there. We did that with our COVID relief fund last year that we were enormously proud of. And that was our owners who said, I want you to take, quite frankly, $4 million out of my pocket and give it to society. And against our anticipated net income for the year, there's almost a third of our profits That's, for a company of our size, a company of any size, a third of profits going to community relief is a pretty huge thing. And that speaks to your first question, which is, ever since the founding of our cooperative, it hasn't been just about the cheese. There were a bunch of folks that went out onto the coast and hacked a living out of the wilderness because it's an awesome place to raise dairy cows. But it wasn't just to, quite frankly, sell the cheese. It was to create a community that took care of each other, and a community that tried to show a way for rural vitality back in 1909 and here in 2021. Rural communities are really suffering right now. And our farmers have charged us as an enterprise to say, find a way for private industry, for us as a company, to lead the way in modeling how do we revitalize and support our rural communities. That's my job. That's the order I've been given by my bosses and the board of directors. So they mean this stuff. And that's both daunting, but also pretty energizing.
Yeah, it's a huge lift, and again, near and dear to my heart too. I think our rural agricultural communities in general, farming, ranching, et cetera, are really in need of new leadership and inspiration, just as industry starts to catch up with them and help them build really resilient, not only food systems, but also economic and regional vitality. So love that we're in partnership on that. Really appreciate, Paul, thank you for joining us today, and thank you to Tillamook for sponsoring our BLD PNW 21 programming. It's been exciting to have them as a sponsor. I feel like the conversation we're having now, if I can put in a plug, is going to be a tipping point for a much bigger food system conversation. So be on the lookout for an invite to that, Paul, because I'd love to bring you back and have more conversation about it. So thanks.
I'll be ready.
Yeah, I love it. And congratulations on the B Corp certification. I know that was a huge feat, especially with a cooperative owned brand or cooperative led brand. So congratulations on that. And thank you for leading the B Corp movement in our region and nationally.
Katie, thanks so much. And thanks to everybody who's in attendance today. We're all part of the blessed unrest. And so it's up to us. And it's great to see so many people who are taking time out to talk and to listen, all with the dedication of an impact in the world on our environment, on society, on social justice. It's up to us. And so it's great to see so many people here.
Fantastic. Well, we'll see you soon. Audience members, please head back to the main session for more exciting discussions today. Take care, Paul. See you soon.
See you soon, Katie.
Bye.
That was Paul Snyder, the Executive Vice President of Tillamook, and Katie Reardon, the COO of Burgerville. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Anna Medill, the founder and CEO of Avenue Agency, is joining us now. We are thankful that Avenue has joined this conference as a keynote sponsor, and I'd like to invite her to introduce our next conversation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So as you know, I'm Anna Medill. I'm honored to be here today to introduce this next panel on behalf of Avenue. We are a B Corp digital and social media marketing agency for purpose-driven companies. And today's topic is particularly relevant for Avenue and many of our clients. As B Corps, many of us struggle to attract new customers, clients, and perhaps one of the most challenging groups of people to figure out are the truly socially minded, independent thinkers engaged in this world and inspired by action. So yes, we're talking about Gen Zers, and they are coming of age and heading into college from childhoods where a Black president, the legalization of gay marriage, and diverse family structures have become a part of the norm. So they don't really know a time when information wasn't immediately accessible and where social media wasn't a part of their day-to-day life. So they are among the generation most likely to be affected by changes to the economy as the workers, consumers, and community members of the future. And the Annie E. Casey Foundation expects that they will grow into engaged, conscientious stewards of our world by being socially minded, independent thinkers who recognize their responsibility in shaping a more equitable future for everyone. So as they enter college, the B Corp movement has the opportunity to teach them how business and economic systems can work for the betterment of the world. Our next guests will explore how to reach them, what to teach them, and how to work with them to create a society where business as a force for good is just another norm in their lives. So with that, I would like to welcome Jessica Yinka-Thomas, who is the co-founder, president, and board chair of The Academics, Courtney Maidenbauer, who is an MBA candidate at Portland State University. And together they are here in conversation with moderator Sarah Rothenflusch. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Anna. Anna Medill has been such a big supporter of us here at this conference. So thank you, Anna, very, very much. We really appreciate it. Okay, here we are on with our conversation. Jessica Yinka-Thomas is the founder and CEO of B Academics, and Courtney Meidenbauer is in the MBA program right here at Portland State University. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, great to be joining you.
Wonderful, good to see you. And do we have Courtney here as well? I know she's here somewhere.
Yep, I'm here. Sorry. Hey, everyone.
There you are. Good to see you, Courtney. So today we're talking about Gen Z, who are also called Zoomers. They're succeeding the millennials, both born from the 1990s, mid-1990s to the early 2010s. I'm curious if we have any Gen Zers or parents of Gen Zers or friends of Gen Zers here today. If so, throw it up in the chat. I'm curious about your perspectives as we go through this conversation. But Jessica, I want to begin with you, please. I want to give people a little bit more context as to your background. You have 20 years of experience studying social innovation, sustainability, and business as a force for good. And you're joining us today, not from here in Portland, but from North Carolina, where you're director of the, I love this title, Director of Business Sustainability, Collaboration, and you're an assistant professor of practice in the Department of Management, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship in the Poole College of Management at North Carolina State University. Jessica, did I get that right?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
I love it. I love it. And of course, you teach in the MBA program as well. Could you just give me a little bit of context here? We're talking about B Academics. Tell me a little bit about what that means. What are the basics here?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Sarah, for the invitation and the opportunity to speak with everyone at today's BLD conference. And I'm really excited to engage in this conversation with you and with Courtney, who I've had a chance to get to know through our work with B Academics. And so, as you mentioned, one of my many roles is serving as president of B Academics. So we are a global network, and I think we've got a slide here as well that we can bring up, but we're a global network of educators, researchers, students, and practitioners studying B corporations, benefit corporations, business as a force for good. And so we are very much focused on building the academic arm of the B Corp community and really connecting educators, academics, students around really studying, teaching about, conducting applied research that can inform the B Corp movement and really shifting our system of higher education so that we're preparing, right, future social entrepreneurs, future B Corp leaders, future engaged community members, future conscious customers, impact investors, right, progressive policymakers, as we really think about our role as academics and really shifting, right, our system of capitalism so that we are creating value, right, not just for the bottom line, but for stakeholders more broadly defined.
Now, you are one of the founders of this B Academics program. What inspired you? What got you started with it?
Yes, so if I may take you all way back to the day I first learned about B Corps. It was 2009. I was director of the Center for Sustainable Enterprise at UNC Kenan Flagler Business School at the time. One of the programs that we ran there was a 12-month business accelerator program for sustainable businesses across North Carolina. And we were looking for an impact measurement tool, right? How do we measure, how can we measure the impact of the companies at the beginning of the accelerator program, right, across that 12-month period? What were some of the metrics that we could use? And I just happened to read about B corporations. This was very early in the B Corp movement. I reached out to Bart Houlihan, one of the co-founders of B Lab, invited him out to Chapel Hill to speak to our Net Impact students, had a great conversation. I saw just an incredible spark in how the students responded, right, to this idea of a comprehensive, rigorous, transparent set of metrics with what soon very quickly became, right, a very well-recognized global community of leaders and innovators in this space. And so we ended up partnering with B-Lab to test version 2 of the B-Impact assessment with the companies going through that accelerator program many years ago. And I've been studying and teaching about B corporations ever since. And so when I joined the business school at North Carolina State University, in the same week, I had a group of students come to me and say, we want to start a student consulting program where we're working with companies in the community to help them improve their social and environmental impact. And that same week, I had a conversation with the director of a local co-working space called HQ Raleigh at the time, now Raleigh Founded. And they said, we're interested in pursuing B Corp certification. Do you have some students who might be able to work with us on a project? So this was 6 years ago. So we started a pilot for what's now become our B Corp clinic. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about the clinic and the B-Impact team's model. But that's really where I got even more deeply engaged in building the academic community, because I wanted to see who else was doing this kind of work. What were other models of similar student consulting teams working, using the B-Impact assessment as a roadmap, as a framework to drive impact. And so started reaching out and connecting with colleagues who had similar interests. A few of us in 2016 crashed the B Corp Champions Retreat in Philadelphia because there was no way to get invited. You had to be part of a B Corp back then. So we managed to collaborate with some of our B Corp partners who invited us to join the Champions Retreat that year. And we also hosted what turned into our annual B Academics Roundtable. So we got together a couple dozen academics at Wharton that year to come together, share best practices, talk about opportunities for collaborative research. We had representatives from the B Corp community at that first roundtable. And since then, as you saw from that slide, we've been building, right, this now global academic community with thousands of just engaged people from kind of across the academic spectrum. We're pulling together resources. We've got this incredible resource repository with over 400 teaching, research, and engagement resources, including hundreds of research articles, case studies, and teaching tools. And so we're just really excited to continue to build and grow this network. We're now an independent 501c3 nonprofit that's B Academics. And I just like to share kind of the arc of our history from sneaking into the B Corp Champions Retreat in 2016 to being on the main stage at the B Corp Champions Retreat in 2019 to receive one of the Collective Action Awards from B-Lab for the work that we're doing. So it's been an incredible journey. We've still got a very big vision and just really excited to connect with others on this call who might be interested in connecting with their local academic institutions, learning more about how they can get engaged with students, with faculty, and how we can really create that bridge between the academic community and the real world.
Well, I'm really excited to hear more about this and sort of connect the Gen Z population with why this is growing and why there's more and more interest in it. But we do have Courtney here, who is a student, an MBA student at the moment, and is part of the program, the B-Impact program at PSU. Courtney, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, you can also click the next slide and have like a nice visual to follow along. So Portland State University, also abbreviated as PSU, is the university that I attend as an MBA student. And PSU has had a program for quite some time. They founded a net impact chapter back in 2010, and then had a branch coming out of that in 2015 for the B Corp B Impact movement. And so Here at Portland State, students in MBA programs can participate, and we work with local businesses, mostly in the Pacific Northwest, to go through the B Corp certification process. So it's really valuable for the students to get real world experience with the local businesses, and we all do it for non-credit. And so we do it in addition to our coursework. So it's really a great opportunity to also balance both your outside of classwork work and then also your experience in consulting. And so we have some facts and figures here on the slide and how much value that the students have provided to the local businesses. And so you have some of the B Corps listed there. And then this fall, we're also working with 3 local businesses to go through the certification process. And they're all along different spectrums of where they're at in the certification process.
That's really wonderful. Do you know if there are certain opportunities that students are looking for right now? We have a lot of business leaders in this conversation. Are there certain things that are kind of exciting students at the moment?
Yeah, so I can speak for like my experience, and I can also say it's helpful for other students, is that there are a lot of food businesses here in Portland. And so I think that can be quite exciting that we've worked with local food businesses and consumer packaged goods company. And so I think that's really exciting for students and also exciting for me to really interact with the product and know, like, when you're buying and you're interacting and purchasing a product, that you really know all the workings that went into making that a very equitable product. So I think that's really exciting for students because it's very real world and they can see it in the grocery stores and they can interact with it. And even one of the businesses we're working with this fall is actually a local pizza company. So you can partake and go eat their pizza and see the great work that they're doing to really be a great business for their employees.
Jessica, can you put this in context a little bit of what's happening in other parts of the world, not other parts of the world, other parts of the states with other programs that are happening?
Absolutely. So if you want to bring up maybe my slide on the B Corp clinics, I'll talk a little bit about our program here at NC State. And then I know we've got a slide that brings together. So maybe go back 2 more slides really quick. And then I'll come to this slide that gives, I think, hopefully folks a sense of the range of programs out there. So yeah, so like B Impact PSU, we also, so I think B Impact PSU is one of the first B Impact teams, at least that I'm aware of. And so B Lab actually developed this model of putting together, right, student consulting teams, students really excited about opportunities to get engaged in real world consulting projects where they're really driving impact right on the ground in real time, not just simply handing over, right, some recommendations that may or may not be implemented. And so we've also been building our own version of the B Corp clinic here at NC State. And our model, I think one of the things you'll see, and we'll share a little bit in a minute about kind of the range, is just the different models that different academic institutions have taken to, with the same framework, right? This idea of using the B Impact assessment as an impact improvement roadmap. So working with local and global companies across a range of industries on impact improvement projects. And so our model has evolved over the years from a model where we worked with students from a range of different academic disciplines. And in fact, at one point, our program was open to students from across the state of North Carolina, which meant we had students from our public universities like NC State and UNC Chapel Hill, from our private universities like Duke University, from our local community colleges, our local HBCUs, all working together on these B Corp clinic teams. And so if you want to go 2 more slides, what we've actually seen is a whole range of academic institutions. Really, here are just a few examples here in the US, but also outside of the US as well, but building their own models of B Impact team and adapting those to the unique needs of their students and their business community. And so, everything from PSU's infused model that's run by students, right? And that's focused on working specifically with MBA programs, to University of New Hampshire's model, right? Where it's a credit-based opportunity, working with undergraduate students. And so I know there's a lot going on here on this slide, but I think some of the folks in the chat were asking, how can B Corps and how can people on this call get engaged in B academics? Getting involved and working with B impact teams is one way to do that. And this is just a few examples. There may be a B impact team, if not yet, coming to an academic institution near you soon, but encourage you to reach out to your academic institutions. Are there opportunities for you to serve as guest lecturers if there's not a B impact team? Are there opportunities for you to maybe be a coach? Right? We work with B Corp leaders across the Triangle region who serve as coaches in our B Corp clinic. And that's an incredibly valuable set of expertise and talent and passion that our coaches bring to our B Impact Teams projects. And as Courtney was saying, this model allows these different B impact teams to work with companies at any stage across that impact spectrum. So both with companies that are aspiring B Corps, right? Working to make progress towards and achieve certification, as well as with certified B corporations. And so we've worked with many certified B corporations going through the recertification process, businesses that wanted to be best for the world in one or more category, right? To continue that, that vision of B Corps of really, continuing to improve. B Corps that were focused on specific issues. Maybe they were focused on really strengthening their impact around DEI, or maybe specifically, right, focus on strengthening their impact around issues related to climate change. There's a whole different range of ways that B Corps can get engaged, either on the programmatic side, coaching, actually creating project opportunities for these student teams, and where you'll see examples of really hundreds of students, just like Courtney, right, who are looking for these types of opportunities, bring some real talent, expertise, passion, and new approaches and new ways of thinking to companies working, again, across that spectrum.
I feel like you're really going to make an impact with students through these programs, and that will just grow into what's happening in our business communities here with B Corps. I want to think about that Gen Z population for just a moment, because I'm sure you're seeing that in students that are at school. And when I looked up sort of some of the things that describe the Gen Z population, so this is what I'm hearing. Diversity is their norm. There are first digital natives, pragmatic and financially minded. Now, for any of you who are commenting in the chat or maybe have kids who are Gen Z, you may or may not agree with this. Many things are contributing to mental health challenges right now. They're shrewd consumers and politically progressive. Now, when I hear that, I think B Corp movement, there we go, right there. Courtney, is this kind of in line with what you're seeing with some of your friends and some of the kids who are studying at PSU right now?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you mentioned. I think it's very true that they're looking at it more from a stakeholder capitalism rather than a shareholder capitalism, and really seeing that businesses really owe it to a lot of different individuals to do business for good. It's not all about just making money for their shareholders. So I see that, and I also see in conversation, a lot of times individuals I'm not really sure what I want to do with my degree, but I know I want to make a difference, and I really want to make a difference in what I do for my work. So I definitely see that to be the case. And yes, there are some great facts here up on the slide, really showing that capitalism needs to be more positive, and it definitely has a negative view, and they're hoping changing it to the shareholder capitalism, where you're really looking at the environment, the community, which are all pillars of the B Corp assessment.
And Jessica, how is this sort of matching what you're seeing and the growth of your program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would concur with everything that you've said, Sarah, and that Courtney shared. We are really seeing students who, you know, really want to get their hands dirty, right? And, you know, really, you know, as you see, are motivated by societal impact. And so even, you know, a lot of those examples of the impact teams that I shared earlier, those are, you know, co-curricular, extracurricular opportunities where students are really seeking out, right, these opportunities above and beyond their academic commitments to get connected to their local community, to have an impact on the ground in real time while they're students. And I think one of the reasons we've seen a lot of interest in our B Corp clinic program and just the larger B Corp movement is, you know, that disillusionment that you're seeing with capitalism and students really seeking out, right, models of business like B Corps that have measured, right, and demonstrated and verified that they are truly impactful, purpose-led businesses. Students are aware of greenwashing, right? They're aware that there are all these pressures from them, broader, you know, customers, from, you know, prospective employees, from investors, from stakeholders, pressures on companies really to, at the very least, what we're seeing, right, is act responsibly. And they're really looking for those examples of companies that are really genuine, right? And so I think for them, the opportunity to utilize a framework like the B Impact Assessment, connect with a community of global innovators and leaders who have measured, right, and made public their impact, and who are continuously focused on pushing the needle from a collaborative perspective. So then when you think about, right, I think one of the things that's really unique about B Corps, and it's different from when we talk about kind of, you know, impact business, sustainable business more broadly, is there's this really distinct community of 4,000 plus, right, companies that are part of this global movement that's really seeking to shift capitalism in a way that creates broader stakeholder value. And so I think students that really resonates with students when they think about, right, having a real impact, you know, creating a significant shift in the system, and, you know, at the end of the day, making the world a better place. And so I think for all of those reasons, and, you know, for the, you know, it really aligns well with that research that you shared earlier for what students are, the kinds of opportunities students are looking for.
Courtney, have you seen any particular programs or had friends be involved with any particular specific examples of things that have really sort of got them excited about getting involved with B Corps? Or maybe something you've done?
Gosh, that's a good question. When I think about like the excitement, what I think really excites students that work in the B Corp movement and work in B Impact is that we do help local businesses. So I think that really drives a lot of local community, also networking. And then I think about it like it's a great way for students in business programs to both like give back and do meaningful work that's really important to them. But then I do feel that they really do enjoy it because it gives them real world business opportunities. It's really great if you ever have any interest in consulting and then just managing like client expectations. So I think it's just a really great way for students to both get real world business experience, but then also do something that they feel is very meaningful and impactful.
And I assume that getting involved like that just builds excitement among friends and among the school. And, you know, it's a way for B Corps to kind of get the word out more. And something I'm really thinking about is how do companies attract more Gen Z people to come in as consumers or to come in as employees? And I'm guessing that this sort of program really helps with that. Jessica, are there any specifics that you've seen, like a really sort of tangible example of a student who's done something that's really kind of been a great example of engaging with B Corps?
So Well, interesting. Yeah, we've certainly had, for example, students go and work at B corporations where they worked on clinic projects, right? It's a great opportunity for companies to get to know students, see if there's a good fit, and a great opportunity for students, right? To, it's a kind of the most in-depth job interview, right? That you could possibly do is work on a semester-long consulting project, for both the company and the student. So we've had a number of examples of students go on into full-time positions, in some cases internships, full-time positions with companies they worked on projects with. But then also, I see students after they complete the clinic who say, I want to work at a B corporation. So maybe there's not an opportunity with the company that I worked with, but I want to work for a B corporation. And so really use that as a lens as they are deciding, right, what, where they're going to work when they graduate. So we've certainly got a number of examples there. What I'm really excited about and what I'm waiting for is for our students to return to the clinic with aspiring B Corps that they've started, right? Because we've got such an incredible entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the Triangle and some really, outstanding student entrepreneurs. So that's the next step for me, and that's what I'm hoping to inspire and hopefully, have an opportunity to work with those students one day.
If we have any of those students here today, I strongly encourage them to go to the Ask a B Corp Consultant session a little bit later today about how to get more involved. Now, I'm curious, there's someone named Tiffany asked a question in the chat, which has to do with the Just Transition movement. Do you know anything about that? Sorry to put you on the spot there.
I know, I'm curious now. I do not. I will, okay. If there's a link, please share it, but now I'm curious.
Awesome. Okay, we will find out more for sure. As we sort of get ready to close here, where are you hoping that this program goes? You're talking about some students coming in with some of their own ideas and their own businesses. Is there anything else that's kind of really exciting you about this Gen Z population as they're kind of growing up and becoming even more engaged with B Corps?
Courtney, do you want to?
Courtney?
Oh, sorry. It was
That's okay.
I would say what I think would be helpful for Portland State is to just have like more participation in like more businesses and just have more of an impact. Also, I think what could also be helpful is to have some kind of like credit associated with it, because it is really wonderful real world experience. And so maybe that can be translated to credit. And as the slide presented earlier, certain schools just treat it differently. Some do it for credit, some don't. And so that's what I think would be beneficial for Portland State to continue to keep it a very viable program.
That's wonderful. And Jessica, are there any sort of final thoughts you want to leave us with today?
Well, I would just say, kind of building off of what Courtney shared from a student perspective, as I think about the opportunity for the work that we're doing around B Impact teams, I'd love to see us connecting with academic institutions and supporting B Impact teams around the world and learning from, right, other models around the world, and maybe even connecting students from different academics to institutions around the world to work on B Impact teams project, maybe with companies, right, that have a footprint that's kind of broader outside of the US. But I would just put a call out there to everybody or anyone on this call who's interested. I think there have been a couple great links shared in the chat. So thank you so much, Rose, for sharing some great links. There's some opportunities to get involved with B Academics. We are not just academics. And so we're really excited about getting practitioners and B Corp leaders involved in this conversation as we think about how to prepare, right, your future business leaders. How do we prepare stakeholders more broadly defined? We want to make sure that we're bringing in the voice of industry, the voice of the B Corp community into that conversation. So lots of opportunities to get involved with B Academics, with B Impact teams. And so, yeah, as a champion of B Corps, I just want to thank everyone who's joining this call for all the incredible work work that you're doing and the inspiration that you're providing and the data that you're sharing with all of us. I think that's one of the things that's also really powerful is there's just incredible set of data that we as academics can study and hopefully provide some useful insights with. So thank you.
I love knowing people who want to dive into the data. We need you guys out there. Jessica Yinka Thomas is the co-founder, president, and board chair of B Academics and was joining us today from North Carolina. And Courtney Meidenbauer, many of you know as being involved here at B Local PDX. She's an MBA candidate at Portland State University. Thank you both very much. And now I believe we're going to start to send people off to their breakouts. Galit and Corey have a bit more information about what's happening. But of course, you can always go back to SCED if you need to link over to any of them. Galit and Corey, I'm handing over to you.
We're here. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Sarah and Jessica and Courtney. Yep, it is that time for breakouts. Like Sarah said, go back to SCED to see all of them, but let's give you an idea first of what is going on. We have 3 breakouts for you to choose from now. If you were in the conversation about the role businesses have in engaging Indigenous communities, you might want to join part 2 of that conversation. If you missed part 1, don't worry, they still have lots of awesome ground to cover.
And friends of ours here at B Local PDX are running a session on B Corps overall. Want to know how to get certified, getting tripped on this up on a step in the process? Perhaps you'd like to know the benefits of taking this journey? Mike Mercer and Craig Hill will be here to answer those questions. And finally, Sarah's going to be talking with Shannon Keith, the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Sudera. Together, they'll explore how to marry the business of a B Corp with the benefits of being a nonprofit. Have you considered having 2 parts to your work? This is one of the conversations you might want to take part in. All right, we will send everybody on their way and see you back here soon. Thanks, everyone. Hey, Karen.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah. Hi.
That was awesome, DJC Money. We were dancing out here too. Hi, Course. Good to see you. We are still out here at the Nova building. I'm with Kyra, our artist, and I can't wait to show you her progress here. So I'm going to flip around and show you. Hey, Kyra.
Hi. So we are nearing the finish line. And as we approach the ending of our piece, I want to take this moment to facilitate or to share some information about who facilitated me being here and commissioning me for this piece. And that would be a nonprofit organization called Portland Street Art Alliance. I think it's important that that we highlight an organization such as that because they have facilitated over nearly $500,000 worth of commissioning artists to do large scale work. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. So if anyone's interested in looking at Portland Street Art Alliance and what their mission is and what they do for their community and how they can actually help you if you're looking to purchase and facilitate commissioning artists for public art, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to Portland Street Art Alliance. And for myself, if anyone's interested in seeing more of my work, you can look me up on Instagram at Her Name Was Kyra, or you can go onto my website, and that's at hernamewaskyra.com. So thank you guys. I'm really excited about the work and how it's turning out, and I'm really excited to bring this to completion.
Awesome. Let's take a look at that art one more time. Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Kyra. We really appreciate it. And once again, you can come visit this art live. I think Kyra has a few more finishing touches she's going to be putting on tomorrow. We're at the Nova building in the Central East Side area of Portland. We'll drop the address in the chat and it'll be on SCED as well. So come check it out in person. I already see there's some people here doing a tour on bike. It's a great area to bike around. So come visit. And thanks again, Kyra. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear from Whit Jameson from Fourth Mobility. He's going on to talk about how electric vehicles can be an important part of your business, from how you travel to what to expect from the suppliers you choose. Here's Whit to share what they're doing.
Oh, all right. Looks good. I'm going to share my screen just for a little bit here, and we'll get going. I just wanted to say thank you for having me, and also what wonderful music. I've been on a few of these virtual conferences, and music and art really do a phenomenal job of making these conferences just so wonderful and bring back that kind of in-person and interactive kind of ability. Absolutely wonderful stuff, and some sweet designs, some sweet jams. So thank you for having that. All right, let's dive into workplace charging. This is specifically a pretty short presentation, but I wanted to share with you just a little bit more about workplace charging and kind of see it as a tool in a toolbox of reducing emissions at your businesses and around the world in general. All right, so Fourth is a nonprofit based in Portland, but we do work nationally and even a little bit internationally. We advocate for electric, shared, and smart transportation. We do more than electric vehicles but I would need a lot more time to discuss all the different aspects of what we do. So let's move on to just focusing on the workplace charging. So just some background here. EVs have, dramatically increased in production and in adoption over the last decade, from nearly zero to actually closing in on 2 million, and actually most recent estimates put us at just over 2 million, with 1.3 million being battery electric vehicles and the rest being plug-in hybrids. Just a detailed example of a battery electric vehicle, all the energy is coming from the battery. And for a plug-in hybrid vehicle, some energy may come from gasoline and or a battery, sometimes at the same time, sometimes not. There's usually an electric only mode for a plug-in hybrid, which many default to, which is great. And I've got some personal anecdotes here where I know some people that have gone 1,500 miles on a tank of gas, which is pretty incredible considering that the tank of gas is only 10 gallons. So they're charging a lot at home and then driving longer distances and such. But that can be a great way to use a lot less gas and go a very long distance. What does workplace charging look like? I mean, it kind of can look like whatever your parking situation looks like, or even on streets. There's many locations around the US that have on-street parking that also has a charger right next to it. LA has done some really good work in that area, and many other cities are doing that as well. Portland, in addition to those other ones. This is a standard port. This is what it looks like, and kind of head-on, but kind of stylized. But Teslas also have an adapter for that, so no worries there. These are called level 2 chargers. This is what you're going to see at most public chargers that are not the very large ones, the DC fast chargers. But also you might not see these quite as much at homes. These will give about 20 to 30 miles of range per hour of charge. So not something you're going to be looking for on a long road trip, but certainly something that many homes will have, multi-unit dwellings, and public chargers in general for longer dwell times between, a couple hours and, overnight. For workplace charging, there's a lot of good reasons for why you'd install chargers. The main reason generally is for employees, sometimes for customers, and often for fleets. If you do have a fleet, they're an excellent way to see how you can make electric vehicles work, and you're going to need to charge them no matter what. So generally you'll have chargers if you have an electric fleet. That said, I should come back to customers. That customer employee kind of crossover can be very interesting, and that's one of the reasons why I personally recommend networked chargers, which is basically something that's connected to the internet, usually through a cell connection. And that usually comes with features as well that enable, notifications, say, hey, your 2-hour free parking is up. If you continue to charge here, it'll, charge you a couple dollars or something like that. Why install workplace charging? I kind of mentioned some of the reasons in the past, but it's a very tangible commitment to sustainability and the environment, especially if you're a workplace that has a lot of commuters that drive electric or drive vehicles, usually single occupancy. So getting them out of their gasoline vehicles and into electric vehicles can really help. And it's a great way for employees to talk to one another and basically understand a little bit more about electric vehicles. And often, you know, if your buddy at work has an EV, they're probably going to let you test drive at some point. And once you test drive enough electric vehicles, it's hard to go back. It also attracts and retains sustainability-minded employees and customers. And often those customers will really choose you out and pick you because you know, they want to charge while they're shopping or working, I guess, as a employee from that perspective. And then, of course, the fleet transition aspect of it is really important. Charging at work is actually a preferred option for many folks. And it's really important to recognize that if you don't have adequate home charging, like myself, you know, at work is a really critical location for charging. So that's another thing to keep in mind, another aspect of it. And there's, as more EVs are adopted by more and more folks, it's going to be even more important that the people that don't have adequate access to home charging have access to charging somewhere. And generally, you want that to be at work. On the road can be a bit more expensive, which is kind of deeper in the weeds. But if you have any questions, feel free to send them my way. I've got my email at the very end. And of course, there are incentives for installing chargers. I think there's kind of two sets of incentives right now, but I'm pretty sure once states come into a little bit more funding, they may offer workplace incentives as well. There's a federal tax credit, which I don't believe has been extended through 2022 or beyond yet, but I think that could be coming soon. It's 30% of the cost of purchasing and installing, up to $30,000 for commercial installations, which include DC fast chargers, which is a much larger expense than generally what you'll see with the level 2 or the public chargers. And that also has a residential side to that federal tax credit as well, but it's capped at $1,000. And again, that's the 30% of the cost. And then of course there are utility incentives, and those incentives differ from one utility to another. But you know, many utilities offer incentives, so it's important to keep track of what your utility incentivizes. Anyway, that's about it. That's just a short kind of view into the world of workplace charging. But if you have any more questions, feel free to send them to me at whitakerj@fourthmobility.org and check us out on our website here. Anywho, that's all I have. Thank you.
Whit, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. This is clearly an exciting place for us all to be thinking about as we consider transportation as we move forward. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now I'm very excited to introduce you to our next guest, Court Morse. You may know Court from other Be Local events that they've been involved with. They spend much of their time providing racial equity strategies to local businesses through their fairly new company, Action Path Racial Equity Solutions. They speak with passion and care, and I think your mind might be blown a little bit by this. Here we go. Court, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thanks everyone for hanging out to hear my thoughts as we land the plane here on these really powerful couple of days. I want to start by saying Buju, Nindinawe Nagane Duk, Ani Anishinabe Duk, Court Morse Nadishna Cause, Bawa Tingando Jabaji Jacques Dem. And that's a traditional greeting. I'm enrolled in the Sault Ste. Marie, Ojibwe, and Anishinaabe tribe. And I wanted to greet you in a good way today and really give you a high five from my spirit to yours. And as Sarah mentioned, I've been involved in the nonprofit sector for a really long time in Portland and most recently the public sector. And my passion is really in how to support businesses of wanting to turn that good intent into good action. And that is the reason that I entitled my new company Action Path, and I'm really excited to transition to full-time consulting here in the next couple of weeks. So thank you so much for inviting me today. Today's themes, I thought about, kind of what I wanted to share with this community. And I wanted to reflect today on really big moments. And to me, what qualifies as a really big moment is anything in your life where you can really remember sort of every detail and knowing that that moment changed the entire trajectory of your life. I think some of us have those moments in our life. And I want to talk about a few because I think we've been in some pretty big moments as a world, and we're headed towards even more big moments. For me, some of the first moments that I remember being really big was when I was a kid in Wisconsin, and there was the Great Oakfield tornado. And that was when I was around 10 years old. It was a F5 tornado that was just north of where I lived. And I remember the sky being super green and my mom racing home in the station wagon and her and I sort of freaking out. And we get home and my dad and my brother are in lawn chairs. So we were on very different pages. They were waiting for the great big show. But I remember that moment being like, wow, life is really precious. At the age of 10, that was one of the first kind of moments I realized how fragile all of this whole life thing was. Another really big moment in my life was when I had come out as queer, and I had moved from Wisconsin to Portland and started with, just a backpack on a train and wanted to come to the big city because I felt like this would be a better place for a queer person to live. And I did not feel it was safe to stay in my Midwest town. And so I had just come out, I was feeling super empowered, and then the ban on same-sex marriage happened in 2004. And I remember that being a moment of wow, here I had hopped on a train to be in a safer place. And now I'm not really sure what my journey will be as a queer and trans person. I remember the moment that I met my partner, and I can't imagine my life without her. She ran up to me after a training and said, "I'm so glad you're here." And at the time, I think she was talking about the work we were going to do together, but we joke now that she kind of knew that we had a future together even then. But the moment that I think we can all think of is the moment that we realized that this pandemic was going to change everything. And I remember my last in-person meeting. I was shamefully kind of dismissing this coronavirus. I'm not really a news buff. And my brother sent me some sort of meme at some point about the coronavirus. And that week, everyone started canceling their in-person events. And I'm sure a lot of you experienced this, that moment that you kind of realized this was a big deal. And then our last meeting was supposed to be a public conversation with a lot of attendees. And at the time we decided to cancel it. And so me and my colleagues were huddled around this conference call phone that we had to kind of dig out of this drawer. And we were thinking to ourselves, that was the moment that I realized, wow, this is going to change forever. This is you guys, this is really going to be a different thing. And they're like, no, we'll all come back to work. And I said, no, like everything's going to change. So I rushed home. My partner and I made like a 24-hour plan to get some groceries, and kind of all of like the worst pandemic movies in my head were playing. And all of my prepper hobbies were coming to the front of my mind. And we turned on the news, and there was definitely this sense of panic. But there was another huge wave of emotion that came over it. And that was the feeling of joy. And that sounds really disrespectful because so many of us have lost people during this pandemic, including me. And I had the privilege to work from home. I'm not a frontline worker, and that is a huge privilege. And so many frontline workers still don't have the option to work from home. But for me and my story, working from home was a huge wave of relief for me. And the workplace was not as empowering as I had hoped for. There was a couple things going on. One is I was suffering from a really painful back injury. And the chairs that were around in the office were not really for my size. They made my back really painful, and I was just in constant pain. The other thing is I didn't even realize I had severe sleep apnea. I just knew that I was passing out at my desk. I knew that I was tired all the time, and I wasn't really prioritizing my health. And so there was a room that was for parents who needed to, have lactation station. There was a little couch in there. There was like a little calendar. You could sign up and go into this private room. And I would try to get into that private room as often as I could to stretch my back, and I would immediately pass out and start snoring. And I was always so worried that someone would think I was lazy, that here's this person taking a nap at work, Not to mention that my job was to end racism in the public sector. And, when you're in your cubicle trying to do that, folks walk up to you and they demand your emotional labor every moment of every day. And finally, there's only one other queer Indigenous person that did end up joining the workplace, but I was definitely the only gender non-conforming person that I knew. And so it was a really isolating experience. And don't get me wrong, I'm obsessed with my work. I love my job. I love my colleagues. I am so passionate about the work that I do. But working from home gave me a huge moment of relief. And as I was racing home to deal with our new reality, I just felt this huge wave of relief of not having to go to the workplace. And I'm not the only one that felt that way. In fact, I was looking into this, and a recent survey of Black employees, only 3% of those Black employees surveyed wanted to return to the way things were. 3%. And of those Black employees, 50% felt a more powerful belonging working from home. So working from home increased a sense of belonging when folks were around less people. And 64% reported an increase in their ability to manage stress. And of a recent survey of 17,000 workers across racial identities and gender identities, 65% reported that they are looking for a new job. And I've been hearing a lot from companies about this sort of employment crisis. And I want us to talk about this because this is a big moment too. And I also want to say that it's not the first time that folks are having this big question around their future and around what they value, and if they want to experience an empowering life at their company. And to kind of explain how we got here, I want us to go way, 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 way back in history. Way back to when Africa, where it all started, was the wealth center of the world. And they were, at the top of the game in every single way, around wealth, around science, and so many communities were thriving. Sure, there was conflict, and sure there was cheap labor, and sure there was these tensions, but there was not like this thirst for global domination. We had the Silk Road transferring goods from East to West Asia, and we had indigenous communities thriving all over the world, and especially on Turtle Island in North America. So we had a time period where people of color were prioritizing the planet and thriving and having really powerful economic structures. Let's take a peek over to England for a second, and let's look at what's going on there. There's famine. The soil went bad and was over-farmed. There's protest happening of the system of serfdom and cheap labor. There's wars going on. And geographically speaking, England was out of the loop, was not on the trade route system, and was not thriving. So enter Columbus and enter this conquest, and we start to see the cycle of violence happen around the world for communities of color. The need and demand for goods and services, this sense of panic, and this mind shift that instead of valuing relationships and people on the planet, we have to go dominate these things in order to get what we need because we're in this panic state. And so with the slave trade, with the genocide and land theft, again, we have this cycle of violence that starts to begin, and this mindset shift, right? That we have to dominate things when we're in this state of panic. So I say that because I think we're in a great moment now to reconsider this this mindset of do we need to continue to go with these tactics of domination, or do we need to move into the age of liberation, right? And how do we solve these problems? Well, the activists are pretty tired. I can speak as an activist. You know, we're never going to give up. But the activists have done so much with little resources. And so the activists certainly have tried to fix these problems. Let's see, the government has shown that it's not under a unified vision quite yet to dismantle systems of racism and solve climate change. And if we try this on an individual level, that's not fast enough for climate change. If we just, focused on our own activities, sure, I absolutely believe in those, but it's just not that kind of big enough, and we've ran out of time, right? So who does that leave as a key player in solving these issues? And to me, that's you, that's businesses. Because businesses is how this all started, right? The need for labor and the need for stuff and the need to move stuff around, right? So I think businesses are at a great fork in the road. I think we're at a really big moment here to ask ourselves if we can move out of these tactics of domination and if we can move into liberation for our employees and for our planet. And so I have some key takeaways because I was told to put in some specifics. And so I have 5 key takeaways that I think businesses can start moving into this place. 1, self-determination. Support staff and employees to decide what is most important for them, particularly people of color, who should pursue our liberation without patience or apology. Number 2, greed. We need to dismantle once and for all cheap exploitative labor, the ways that we demand bodies and time in the way that we've done business before. 3 is kindness. How can we be patient and kind and graceful to each other, especially immune compromised people, high-risk employees? How can we wear masks and watch out for each other? Number 4 is inclusion. And that only happens when we name power in the workplace, particularly around race, and then when we do our culture change work. And the last, but certainly the most important, is urgency. We need to fight like this planet needs us, and our communities can't wait any longer. So I wanted to close by saying that I was in a group of some executives recently, and there was just this sense of fear. What if employees aren't working? What if employees are doing other things when they say they're at work? What if they're going to look for other jobs? And I get it. This whole year and a half has been extremely hard, and change is hard. But fear is not going to get us out of this. We have to be as brave as ever to imagine a new path. And in fact, it is love. It has always been love, and it will always be love that gets us out of this. Love for ourselves, love for our communities of color, love for our employees, love for our planet, that will lead us into this foundation of liberation. So that need for cheap labor started a really long time ago. And it's knocking at our door again. It's fighting to survive. It's telling us that we absolutely need domination to make this whole economy work. And it's just trying to, out of desperation, tell us that we must keep doing these things. So don't answer the door on the systems of oppression. And my ultimate question for today is, can we truly transform out of this age of domination and into this age of liberation? I really, really hope so. But either way, I know we have to. So I thank you so much for being here. I thank you for humbly listening to my thoughts, my words in my heart. And Sarah, I'd be happy to take any questions or reflections that you have. Thank you, Team McGwitch, for all the work you all are doing.
Court, thank you so much for closing us off today with such words of wisdom and so much bravery and so much kindness from yourself. Bravery is certainly something that has come up a number of times over the last 2 days, and you exemplify that. I wish you the very best of luck with the business that you are starting, and I know we're going to see lots more of you, so thank you so much. And with no further ado, I'm going to invite David Kale, the chair of BLocal PDX, and the incoming chair, Kel Moody, to close us off for the day. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And Court, yes, love, more love, please. We cannot get enough of that in business and in the world. So I'm going to wrap things up from the BLocal standpoint today. I think many of you know that I'm stepping down as board chair. This year, I've had 2 fantastic years leading this organization, which has been so inspiring to be amongst this community. And I'm really proud of all we've accomplished together, and despite these really difficult circumstances. We've expanded the composition of our board, broadening the reach within the community. We hired our first employee this year, and wow, what a hire it was. If you haven't had an opportunity to meet Karen Power yet, you don't know what you have in store for you. She's a powerhouse, she's amazing, she's a connector, and she is our new administrative director at BLocal PDX. And as my term ends after these 2 years, we're entering a new phase at BLocal PDX. It's a new evolution for where we're headed. And today I'm going to announce that we're going to launch a paid membership model. So with the hiring of Karen and this new membership model, we're aiming to further strengthen our BLocal community, bringing more and better programming, more opportunities to connect, collaborate, and grow, creating safe spaces for B Corp CEOs and founders with exclusive CEO cohorts to enable our company leaders to support one another, experience share, align around best practices, and hold one another accountable on our common goal to reshape capitalism to benefit everyone. Mina Yu on our board will be stepping into the new board role of membership and engagement chair. And Mina and Karen will be reaching out to the community over the next few weeks to outline this program, the membership levels, and the benefits. We've come so far as a BLocal community in these past 5 years that I've been on the board, and I hope you agree. And I hope all of you will consider taking that next step with us to add fuel to what we need to advance in this hugely important movement. So be on the lookout for that communication soon from Mina and Karen. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to our amazing new incoming board chair, Kel Moody, to wrap us up for Build 2021.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where we can take this community when we have a lot more support and resources behind us. We've been operating as a board for years now with entirely volunteer support, and we've accomplished a whole heck of a lot. I'm really impressed by the work that this community has been able to achieve when we put our volunteer time and our brains and what we have to offer together. And it's going to be really exciting to see how much more we can do together with more kind of support behind us. I just want to say, it's been a really great couple days with all of you. We've had some amazing speakers. Thank you so much to everybody who helped pull this together. A special thanks to Corey and Galit and Sarah, our build chairs, and the whole planning committee. Every minute of time that was put into this is really has been incredible, and so appreciative of all of the things that people have brought to putting this together. It's so important for our community to have these opportunities to come together. And I know that being in a virtual space is just not the same as sharing an in-person gathering, and I really hope we can do that again soon, hoping for next year. But it is important for us to be able to come together and to share our passion, to share our strength, to share our growth, and to learn from each other. And it's just been such a blessing to be able to hear from these really incredible speakers that have offered their wisdom to us. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to spend the next couple of years leading this community with all of you by my side. Thank you so much, and looking forward to keeping on going.
Thank you so very much, Kel and David. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you and the amazing Be Local PDX board. So as we wrap up, I do want to announce the last two raffle winners. The winner of a year's worth of eggs from Pete and Jerry's is AJ McCreary from Equitable Giving Circle. And for the final gift box, the winner is Garrett Cohen from Grady Britton. So we will connect with you.
Great. Again, thank you so much, everybody. Kel, that was very nice to hear from you again at the end. I want to say a special thank you to Zach and Danielle from 100 Seconds, our production team. They've been amazing. And we're going to pull up the slides again and recognize all of our friends and sponsors for all of the support. Tillamook and Beneficial State Bank are presenting sponsors. The gift bag sponsor, Relay Resources. Engagement sponsors, Permanente Dentistry, Metropolitan Group, and Killian Pacific. Our engagement sponsors, Avenue and Fully. Community sponsors, Crosby Hops, Living Room Realty, 100 Seconds, and Mirror. Our green sponsors, Northwest Permanente, Progressive Investment Management, Bonneville Environmental Foundation, and 3 Degrees. Our engagement sponsors, New Seasons Market, the Green Cities Company. Community sponsors, Blackbird Benefits Collective, Cushman & Wakefield, M. Mercer Consulting, Scout Books, and Wanderwell. And all of our in-kind sponsors. Thank you all so much.
And a big thank you to the phenomenal BLD Planning Committee and the Be Local PDX board. We hope you found the last 2 days enjoyable and informative. And as we wrap up this amazing 2-day conference, please let us know how we did. You can leave feedback on SCED for each session, or you can email us at bldpnw@belocalpdx.com. Also sign up for the Be Local PDX newsletter. More information Rose is going to be putting in the chat shortly.
The videos from these 2 days will be online for you within the next month. Check out the Be Local PDX site to see it all.
All right, thanks again. We're wrapping up, but please feel free to stay on for a dance party with DJ C Money. What we're going to do is we're going to promote everybody from attendees into the webinar as hosts and panelists, so you can turn on your camera and dance with us. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye, thank you.